Where there's metabolism, there's movement. Where there's adaptation and reproduction, there's movement. Where there's life, there's movement, in other words. I'm Owen Hearn, and I'd like to explain to you guys my philosophy on movement and how it can help with the mind and the body. I got this philosophy from a man named Ido Portal and built on it with my own understanding, with the help of Zen, Taoism, science, and personal practice. The movement philosophy is a life philosophy that states that stagnancy causes pain and disease. Sedentary lifestyles are a cause of much of our mental and physical illness. But on the side note, I'd like to state, before I state this practice, that humans think of things as separate, and we like to box things up. So movement versus no movement, good versus bad, pain versus pleasure. But there's no separation. There's no movement versus no movement. And really, the dualities are two sides of one wheel that will eventually turn into each other, and they do not exist without the existence of the other. But movement is special here because it is the wheel. All things come from movement, and movement is a constant in the universe. Even the brick or the table that you're sitting at is moving at an atomic level. But even things that seem like they're moving all the time, like the body, can be still while sitting. So moving is ever existing. It is the nothingness that everything arises from. And the movement philosophy is based on this principle. The body and mind are to be free and express all potentials of movement, avoiding static and tension. When one runs too much, they are tense. When one sits too much, they become tense. When one believes one thing, they restrict from other ideas. When one clings to the past, they neglect the present. And when they chase the future, they miss the now. The mind is movement, as is the body, and must be treated as one, for again, labels are restrictions and abstractions, not reality. There is no real separation. The movement philosophy encourages one to be open and freely express themselves. That is all. That is freedom. The philosophy means that one does not identify as a philosopher, or as a mover, or as a yogi, or a martial artist, or a politician. It means that we are nothing that can be consolidated by words or ideas. To be moving is to be fluid, embodying whatever is right now. As Bruce Lee said, if nothing within you is rigid, outward things will disclose themselves. Moving, be like water. Still, be like a mirror. Respond like an echo. Monkey bars, bear crawls, lizard walks, sprints, handstands, cartwheels. The mover moves. Physical health is a result of the degree and quality of movement. The American Cancer Society has indicated that sitting for more than 6 hours a day increases the risk of cancer, of dying early. People in today's society sit far too much. It's shown in many studies that sitting for a few hours at a time over a long period of time increases the chronic risk of disease, including cancer and heart disease. Now, as well as disease though, especially sitting with poor posture and moving with poor posture biomechanics, one can become tense and cause joint problems and pains and poor blood flow. But athletes and people who move a lot are often at these risks as well, of tight muscles and of chronic stress and long-term damages to the body because of the repercussions of being a specialist and training the body to move in very specific patterns rather than an all-encompassing way of moving. Stretching and cardiovascular activity and strength building and mindful movement like yoga and Tai Chi and martial arts and even breath work are all critical forms of movement that will dramatically increase health, life expectancy, and just overall feeling of being present and fluid in the body. One must know what the body needs and where it is at any given time to be totally present in the body with the movement that exists right now. Now, to shed light on how the movement philosophy can improve one's mental state, Bruce Lee also said, to see a thing uncolored by one's own mental preferences and desires is to see it in its own pristine simplicity. This depicts the philosophy of Zen Buddhism. In Zen, the goal is to become without goals, disciplined to having no discipline, and the returning to one's innate nature, where there is less thinking, no past and future, and no needless suffering. This is the fluidity of the mind. The mind is constantly moving, accepting the present and awareness and all that awareness receives while letting go of all that is not here anymore. The mind can mold to its new reality, inhabiting reality wholeheartedly. However, as humans, we often separate ourselves from the fluid happenings of the present due to our analysis, attachment, fear, and guilt. And the movement philosophy encourages one to let go of these things, to let go of their resentments, beliefs, ideas, fears, judgments, and more, to avoid the constant avoidance of the discomforts of life, and to become completely embracing of the present moment. A Taoist sage once stated, "A tree that is unbending is easily broken." After all, how can one be hurt if the mind has no preferences? So to follow movement is to let go of constructs of the mind in walking, in yoga, in studies, in workouts, you name it. To be a mover is to be a nomad of life, adapting, not dragged around by day-to-day happenings and habits. To be a mover is to abandon the formal practice and to be oneself fully. The point of the philosophy is not to convince one to be anything other than they are, nor is it a way of life. This philosophy I've developed is like, as is said in Zen, the finger pointing at the moon. I must not become distracted by the finger and miss the moon. Thank you so much for your attention.